what you think.
Talk about the issues of the world.
What kind of spice you wanna be?
Tell me where you wanna travel.
Do you believe in luxury?
What's your hidden passion?
What makes you so unique?
Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole.
Greetings. Happy Wednesday. It is Wednesday, July 8th, 2020, and it's what I call What Women Want Wednesday. I am Nicole Everett, the host of Conversations with Nicole, and this is an interactive live. So I invite you to engage in conversation with me and my guest tonight. So we are about to really dive in. But before I bring my guest on, if you will, please, in the comments, tell me what city and state you are viewing us from. What city and state you're viewing us from. I see you, Miss Brandy Knight, who's right here in Tally Ho. Thank you for tuning in. So I want to hear from you. Where you viewing us from? What city, what state? Your name will come up, so just put the city and the state in the comments, and I will give you a shout out. So July is Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. So for the entire month of July, every Monday for Man Up Monday, every Wednesday for What Women Want Wednesday, we are featuring Black and brown therapists, counselors, clinicians of color. So we are super excited to have our very special guest, Ms. Lashaundra with the Blue Lotus Counseling and Holistic Wellness Center. But before I bring her on, let me acknowledge a few more folks. I see you, Tiffany. Greetings, Tiffany. Dr. Tiffany Packer was on a couple of weeks ago. My cousin, Tanya Everett out of the DMV is on. Thank you for being on, Tanya. And my sister LaTanya out of Atlanta. And then Javon Mobley, who is also out of Atlanta. So thank you, ladies, for being on. Please, this is a safe place, a safe space. So let's engage in conversation. So without further ado, please welcome Miss Lashaundra Cromotee. Yay!
Thank you, Nicole. Greetings, everyone. Good evening. I'm excited to be here tonight to kind of discuss my favorite thing, mental health, the importance of mental health.
Okay. Well, before we dive in, tell the folks where you're from, what you do, and who you are.
Okay. So I'm originally from West Palm Beach, Florida. I'm a South Florida girl. Came to but Tallahassee is home. Came here, fell in love with the city, and this is where I will raise my children for the most part. And so, before I am anything, I am a woman.
Okay.
I am a Black woman. I am a Black mother who happens to be a mental health counselor. And more often than not, I actually refer to myself as a facilitator of healing. So I help people tap into what they already have to help them get to that place of healing. Because I feel like everything we need, we already walk with it.
I love that. A facilitator of healing. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
So tell the folks, Blue Lotus Counseling and Holistic Wellness. What is that? How long you been doing it?
Okay. So Blue Lotus Counseling and Holistic Wellness is fairly new. Actually, last month, June made our 3rd year. So, yes, had we not been dealing with COVID, I would have had a beautiful celebration, but I still have time to do that in the future. So we're about 3 years old. Okay. Blue Lotus was we came up with this idea. Me and the co-founder, Yolanda Smith, came up with this idea to provide culturally competent services for our people. And so what I and her realized while working in the field, while working for many agencies, is that when it's majority of Black and brown people receiving services, but it's majority of our white counterparts being a therapist. And so what was happening was there was a disconnect between the therapist, the white therapist, and the Black and brown client. And usually the only missing component was culture. And when I say only culture, it was just that, but culture plays a big role when you're talking about healing, when you're talking about understanding dynamics, when you're talking about trauma. So we decided to create a facility with services primarily for Black and brown individuals.
That's awesome. Prior to my getting involved with the mental health council of the Big Bend, I didn't realize how important cultural competency was in treating or tending to Black and brown folks. But I definitely do see that as critical, because of the experience, our experience here in these United States of America. So, I'm glad that you all had the intention and foresight to set up Blue Lotus to be mindful of all of that and take that into consideration in order to be facilitators of healing. I'm gonna be saying that all day. I love that. So Brandy has a question, and by all means, please, for you all who are viewing, please put your questions, your comments in. We'll try to get to them, but I really want this to be engaging. So Brandy wants to know, do you see children as well?
Yes, I see children. And so that's an excellent question. I see children, but the thing about that, if I see a child, I more than likely will see that family. And so when you're talking about providing services to Black and brown communities, you're talking about engaging the entire family, because if impacting the individual, it's impacting the family. So yes, I see children, but by way of the child, I usually see the parents and the rest of the family in between those services.
Okay, very good. All right, so let's dive in. So our first topic of discussion is the pros and cons of counseling. Pros and cons of counseling. So what can you tell us? What you want us to know?
So I'm actually going to start with the cons of counseling.
Okay.
Because I think when you're talking about counseling, you're talking about, particularly for the Black and brown community, you're talking about something that has a stigma associated with it. You're talking about a taboo. You're talking about this idea of telling people your business or the family's business. And that goes against everything that we've been taught. There's this idea of don't tell what goes on in my house. Yeah. And so that's been embedded in Black and brown families. And so I want to say, when starting with the cons, there's this idea that a con to therapy is you're telling all of your business. And so that's one of the cons. Okay. But the reality of it is that con ends up benefiting you. And you aren't necessarily telling the family business, you're telling your individual business. You're talking about how things that are going on are having a negative impact on you, or things that you may have experienced within the family. So it calls for accountability in some instances.
Okay.
So that is one of the cons of therapy or counseling. And so another con is it takes time. So you have to come to the table with an idea of that you're making an investment. And
Mm,
any investment that you're going to make is an investment of time. So that's the number one thing. For some people, finances is one of the cons. Just like physical health comes with the price tag, especially here in the United States, so does mental health therapy or having your emotional health tended to. So for those of us who don't have insurance, therapy can be considered expensive. For those of us who do have insurance, therapy can still be considered expensive because oftentimes you have a deductible. I know I have had individuals who's had a deductible of $3,000 or $4,000 that needed to be met before they could get to that place where services were either free or they were just paying the copay. Some instances, the copay is the same amount as my private pay services.
oh
So
wow.
then here it is, you're paying a copay, but for me, it's not even worth billing the insurance company because this is the same amount that I charge outright.
Mm,
So just those are barriers, payment, the
mm,
time that's needed.
mm-hmm.
And during this COVID, time is not as big of a factor just because many of us have more time on our hands.
Right.
So, but pre-COVID time was a big issue. When do I have time to sit and talk with somebody? But the reality of that is most sessions run about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's not including the travel time. So those are the cons that are associated with therapy. Go ahead.
So let me pause right there. So interesting that you would say, folks say, I don't have time. You know, I think through COVID and us sheltering in place, I think we've at least I have recognized how much time I have spent on certain things that I may have deemed them as something that needed to be done, but in
Mhm.
the larger scheme of things, they really didn't. And I really should have been tending to my mental health, you know, like I have
Mhm.
been now that I have had to shelter in place and sit in my thoughts and my emotions and all of the things that I may have been putting on the back burner because of these other activities that I thought were so important. So, I say all that to say that we need to make time to, as my sister Janita says, get your checkup from the neck up.
Mhm.
Your checkup from the neck up, right? So
Mhm.
get a mental health assessment, get some counseling services because you probably will find that there is more um, to you and your thoughts and more healing and dealing that needs to take place than you realize.
Mhm.
So we got a couple of questions. We got John
Okay.
Johnson on here said, how do your business survive? I think he meant how does your business survive? So yeah, I guess he's wanting to know how are you compensated?
Okay. So, because I am providing services to Black and Brown individuals, there are times when I I am providing free services. But because I am blessed, I'm able to do that. For every time I give, I receive. So, um, part of my part of the work that I do, part of my calling includes doing some things without a price tag on it, and I'm cool with that. And
Okay.
so, but I do take certain insurances. Medicaid is one of those things. I am this January. Blue Lotus became a nonprofit, so I've been in the process of applying for grants. So I'm hoping to see some of those things manifest this year.
Yes, yes.
Um, so there are money does flow, but I have an excellent support system. Word of mouth has been really good to me. And so I have the clientele that I need. And when I don't, just blessings are made. Things happen. So,
And so you mentioned Medicare, you mentioned insurance,
mhm,
the insurances, but you also do a fee for service, correct? You do
yes,
receive
yes,
monies directly from your patients, your clientele.
yes.
Okay. All right. So we got another question. Brandy wants to know, speaking of time, what time, days is your practice available? Uh-oh.
Okay. So, um, again, because I'm servicing our population, we have to be a bit flexible. Um, so I try and do the Monday through Friday, 10 until 6 scope, but sometimes that doesn't work. I have a couple clients right now that I'm seeing in my 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., and 9 p.m. slots on a couple days. So the benefit of working for myself is I get to schedule those hours as I need to. The con for working for myself is I need to schedule those services when they're needed. So it's something that is anticipated, and so but for the most part, most people don't most of us don't have that concrete Monday through Friday 8 to 5
Mm-hmm.
um privilege. So I do provide evening services,
Okay.
and every now and then I'll do a Saturday up once a month.
Okay. Good deal. So Anita
Hmm.
Neil Favors is on here. She said, yes, sitting with ourselves can be self-revealing. So thank you for being on here, Anita. So okay, so I think we covered all the cons?
Yes, yes, for the
Okay.
most part.
So let's move on to the pros.
Okay, so uh, you begin to see the pros of counseling and therapy when you find yourself with a good therapist. So, not all therapists and clients are a good match. And so, the first thing you want to do is just like friendship, not all friends are a good match for friendship. So, when you find yourself deciding, hey, I'm going to reach out, I'm going to engage in counseling services, then you want to make sure that you find a counselor. I strongly encourage culturally competent counselors. So if and I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna give an example why. I'm gonna give two examples why.
Okay.
If I have somebody that needs to process having a hot comb put through their head at the age of 7, the therapist needs to be able to understand that without the client having to go into deep detail. What is a hot comb? What do you mean put through your head? And why would a comb going through your head be traumatizing?
Listen, because I got this burn on my ear that I still got at almost 50 from when the
Hmm.
electrician burnt my ear from that hot comb when I was getting ready for Easter that Saturday. So
Hmm.
all of that.
So, we have to have. It is extremely important to have a counselor that identifies or understands the language that you're going to be using. They have some type of understanding of the experiences you're describing, and can even when they you don't have the words, have the ability to kind of feel their way through and grasp what you're talking about. So finding that can be challenging, but one of the pros when you do find that is the ability to communicate from your soul.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do all that code switching. You don't have to do all that extra explaining. You don't have to do just this. Not only talk before you even get to a place where you're talking about the trauma, you're explaining it. And so that's it.
So you
So
use
one of the
the
Go
term that
ahead.
I want you to explain. You said code switching. So for
Mm-hmm.
people who may not know what code switching is, can you explain what that is or give a brief
Yeah.
summary of what that is?
Hmm. So code switching is when we have to enter into this politically correct and proper way of speaking. And so, and not only way of speaking, way of behaving, way of expressing, way of acknowledging. So when I'm not around Black women, I can't be as passionate as I might want to be,
Mm,
because for some it might come off as aggression, it might come off as like fear, or it might come off as just any inappropriate feeling or emotion. And
mhm.
so it's a unspoken language that we have that we're not allowed to per se utilize in the workforce all the time and in certain populations.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity. So that causes me to think about the double consciousness that I think W.E.B. Du Bois talked about in terms of how we are with Black folks versus white folks in terms of
Mm-hmm.
proper English and, you know, conforming to a certain behavior and demeanor and things of that nature. So, okay, so
Mm-hmm.
code switching. So not sure
Yeah.
if you all had heard of that one before, but I definitely wanted to get some clarity on that. All right, so
So
pro.
we're talking about the pros.
Mhm.
So you have an immediate support system. Oftentimes we don't want to just tell everybody what's going on in our lives. We don't want to acknowledge some of the trauma that we've been through. And so when you get a therapist, you have a support system. You have somebody that you can tell all your business to, and legally they
Mm,
are bound to keep it to themselves because of the HIPAA laws.
mm,
So that's one of the pros of getting you a therapist. You could just about tell them anything and they cannot tell anyone. And so if someone comes to me and say they're going to rob a bank tomorrow, that's just what it is. They're going to rob a bank tomorrow. I have no legal obligation to report it to anyone. And if I was to disclose it to someone, then my client has the ability to come and sue me for malpractice because I went outside of the HIPAA guidelines and disclosed information from a session.
gotcha.
So there are four things that don't apply. In the event that someone discusses wanting to harm themselves, that
Mhm.
is something. If you have a plan, you're going to hurt yourself. That is something that I will disclose to law enforcement, and or I will personally be making sure that you are on your way to a hospital for the help that you need.
Mhm.
Um, in the event of child abuse, that's
Mm,
something that I have to report. And
right.
so, but I want to also be clear about that. When I'm talking about child abuse, I'm not talking about yo uh my Kamari saying coming in and say, "Oh, my mom beat me last night." So I know context clues. I will have to examine that. What do you mean your mama beat you? Because that's just a term that our children use.
Mhm.
And so then I will further investigate that. Oh, she popped me on my behind because I sucked my teeth when she told me to go take out the garbage. Oh, okay, that's not abuse. Abuse for me means just that, abusing your child, doing physical harm.
Mhm.
Disciplining your child and abusing your child are totally different.
Okay.
So that's also one of the cons that some people have experienced in therapy. They've had instances where the child might say, "My mom beat me," and that resulted in the DCF called because it was taken out of context. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but elderly abuse is also something that I have to report. And in the event you have a plan to cause harm to somebody else.
Okay.
So, and that's homicidal harm.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Gotcha.
So outside of that, everything else remains between us.
Okay.
So that's one of the pros. You could basically tell anything and then it stays there. One of the pros of therapy is you really get to have somebody to help you hear yourself talking. So it's one thing to talk in your mind, it's another thing to verbalize those things
Mm-hmm.
among somebody who could help you process your feelings, somebody who could help you learn coping skills to deal with some of the emotions that you're experiencing, and somebody who's being non-judgmental and is able to normalize some of the things that you're feeling, because believe it or not, you are not the only one who's experiencing that emotion, who may be feeling overwhelmed, or who may be dealing with a teenager that make you feel like, whatever they make you feel like. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so those are pros. Another pro, which sometimes is hard when we really begin to peel back some of the layers, some of like unlayering an onion. When you begin to peel back some of those layers, initially it seems hard because you're visiting you may be visiting memories that you thought you pushed down. You may be pulling off band-aids. You may be um just taking off the blanket that is covering something nasty.
Right.
But in doing that, you begin to promote healing for whatever that trauma is or that scar is. You begin to clean it.
Mm-hmm.
You begin to promote to get rid of the infection. And so those are the benefits of counseling, just having that support, a new support system, having
Mm-hmm.
somebody to help you learn coping skills, normalizing your feelings, help you process some of the things that you're thinking, and it allows you to tap into yourself. Who am I?
Yes.
Who was I?
Right. Right. How did I
Mhm.
get to the place that I am?
Yes,
Mm.
yes.
So we got
And what can I do to get to where I want to be?
absolutely. So we got a
Mhm.
few questions here. So Dr.
Okay.
Dan Close, who is an instructor over at the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University,
Yes, yes, yes.
he wants to know, if you have a Black therapist, can we assume that they have the same experiences?
And so, no, having a Black therapist does not mean that they had the same experience. 'Cause everybody's experience is different. Even I don't care if we experience something that was similar, even in that similar experience, 9 times out of 10, there was a different variety. Something about it was different. So, no, we can't assume that a therapist has had the same experience. But what we can kind of assume, and you'll feel this out. One thing that we walk with as Black and brown people, the spirit of discernment. We feel vibes. We sense things. So sometimes, especially when we're being intentional,
Mm-hmm.
just we might not vibe with somebody, and that's enough. But you don't necessarily have to have the same experience to be able to hear what someone is talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the difference. To understand, just understanding, and sometimes we can't even find words, but understanding the culture is the one experience that allows for that progress. And that's another thing. I want to go ahead and say this. You could have a white therapist who can be beneficial. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that that's not possible, but I am saying there is something to be said about having a therapist who understands the culture that you're familiar with, because it's been a part of who you are for your entire life.
Right. So Fran also serves on the Mental Health Council of the Big Bend, and she is the originator of that Black and Brown therapists and counselors list. She and her daughter put that list together. So we talked about adding you and some others who are
Mhm.
in this region to that list. So that is a working list. So, folks who know of other therapists who weren't on there, please let us know so that we can add them as well. So, thank you for that question, Fran, and thank you, Lashaundra, for
Mhm.
responding. So, we got a couple more questions, and I'm going to slide these in before we transition to our next topic. But Javon wants to know, are there services to help mental health people find employment? This may not be the call for the question, but maybe you know of an organization.
Okay, so when you say mental health people, are you referring to people who struggle with mental health issues? And so, if that is the question, struggling with any type of mental health issue does not mean that you're incapable of working.
Mhm.
So, there are services in place that do help people. Vocation rehab is one of those things. When you're talking about extensive mental health issues, there are services in place to help with that, but a big part of mental health is getting somebody who's experiencing symptoms to a place where they can function, where
Mhm.
their mental health is not causing them an inability to function in their daily lives. So
Mhm.
once they get to that place, then that's when looking for employment is possible. That's when them gaining employment and keeping it becomes viable and doable when they're able to get to a place where they're able to function with the day-to-days,
Okay.
with their day-to-day activities.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, Janae, I see your question, but I'm gonna wait on that one until because I think it'll be answered in as we transition. So, Javon gave a little bit more of a comment to her question. She said, "Yes, if they are on meds, they can function, but not at a high level." So that.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so then, if they could function but not at a high level, it would be getting a job that works for them and what get works for them and what their disability is.
Mhm. So I think,
So,
like you
for
said,
instance,
vocational rehab will
hmm
assist with placing them.
hmm
Mhm. Okay, very good. All right, so let's move on to Black women and
hmm
professional therapy. So
okay.
is this a thing? Like, Black women, I know we have the stigma, kind of across the board with Black and brown folks and not
hmm
their business to be, their household business to be told out on the streets or what have you. But specifically for Black women, is therapy, an issue?
Okay. So, I'm finna talk about us, Black women.
Uh huh.
So, Black women, we are strong, we are vibrant, we are beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
we are resilient.
Mm-hmm.
We work with Black girl magic. We boy, we do some things. And so and we're raised to do some things. We're
Yeah.
raised to not fail. We're raised to be perfect. We're raised to be excellent mothers, excellent wives, excellent friends, excellent daughters, excellent sisters, um, excellent grandchildren. We're raised to just to exude excellence.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is we internalize that. We internalize this idea that I am superwoman. I shall not fall. I shall not cry.
Mm.
And so as a result of that, we don't break down. We don't seek help. We're so busy maintaining our role and our and caring for everybody else
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes we don't even see the toll that is taking on our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health, our spiritual health, and our financial health. We'll give our last. And
Mhm.
so, um, as a result, by the time we reach out for professional help, our hand is forced. We
Mhm.
find ourselves not able to function. We find ourselves having panic attacks. We might even find ourselves hospitalized,
Mhm.
or have had a physical
Mhm.
response to the lack of mental health, the lack of emotional health. And so we're starting to do better because there is a move amongst Black women for self-care. So
Mhm.
we're starting to show a little more self-interest because and when you're talking about numbers, Black women's with health, physical issues, we're number one. And that's because we making sure everybody go to the doctor but us. We making everybody dentist appointment, we making everybody doctor's appointment, we making everybody we doing all the deposits, we running households, we running offices, we running a community, we running churches, we running everything. We running the food pantry. I mean, we just do it all.
Mhm.
And so as a result, we are tired and we don't realize it until we dog tired
Mhm.
and we are forced to stop. And so
Mhm.
that's when we begin to seek help. But some of us are hard headed because some of us, our body will say, sit down. And we'll sit down for 30 minutes. And soon as we feel like we got a second wind, we up and going again.
I'm
And
gonna
then
need,
bam.
I'm gonna need you to stop stepping on my toes tonight, ma'am. You just all on my toes, just scuffing my feet all up. You stepping all on it. So
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of comments. Javon said, "Amen." Fran said, "Preach." Janae said, "We tired. We
Mm-hmm.
tired." So true. So
Mm-hmm.
Javon wants to know, do you believe emotional unavailability is strong in our Black men and women? I believe it's a form of mental health that is rarely discussed but major in our communities.
So when you're talking about emotionally unavailable, I think it is a component, but it's only I think when you're talking about Black men and Black women being, I'm gonna definitely speak for Black women being emotionally available. We are available. We're available to everyone except ourselves.
Hmm.
So I think, and that's where the issue lies.
Hmm.
Now, for men, I don't even want to talk about the men because how I don't. Black, we got some issues. Black women have issues. Black men have issues, and not to not to make excuses, but how can my brother, my husband, my son, my uncle be emotionally available when he's worried about living another minute in the state of America?
Hmm.
And
Very true.
so this idea of being emotionally available when you're in survival mode is hard.
Hmm.
It's extremely hard. And so what we have to do as Black women and as Black men is understand um understand and acknowledge what we're dealing with, what we're up against. We can't allow fear to motivate us. We can't allow fear to guide us because that is what feeds that emotional um, emotional disconnect.
Hmm. Wow. Yes. So true. All right. So Brandy was saying she felt judged, and I was too. So let me go back to Janae's question from earlier,
Mm-hmm.
where she asked, "How do we normalize therapy, especially in the Black community?"
Okay, so that's a great question. And so I kind of want to, I'm gonna back up because about the history of therapy, it may seem new, but when we look at the entire history of Blacks, you will know that it's nothing new about therapy in the Black community. The thing is, the presentation of it is different. So, for instance, as a child, I probably had 10 therapists, and it was the mothers of the church, it was the deaconess of the church, it was the youth pastor, it was the Sunday school teacher. Um so you have elders.
So
I
teachers
go
and
ahead.
teachers and counselors and
Yes,
old.
teachers especially.
Mhm.
So this idea of therapy is not new. Our roles in the community have changed, and as our roles have changed, so has our this idea of therapy. And so even accountability, therapy, a big part of therapy is accountability. And so when you were being held responsible not by only your parents and your family, but also by your community and by your neighbors and by people that you engaged with, that was a form of therapy because it called for accountability. And so that has changed. We aren't even engaging um, our neighbors. So that sense of therapy, that sense of being able to process something or being able to share your feelings is no longer there in an extensive manner. And so we're having to rely on professional therapists.
Hmm. So it sounds like it was more of a collective, and now
Hmm.
it's not so much.
Exactly. And so that's the change. But another part of that too is I think as we so when you're looking at wealth and going from poor and working poor to middle class, you're
Mhm.
looking at a different being in a different group. And so for those who of us who went from being grandparents may have been poor or working poor to being middle class,
Mhm.
our fights are different. And so now we aren't struggling with resources.
Mm.
Now we're struggling. Now it's, oh, I have a little more time because I don't have to work two jobs to
Mhm.
take care of my household. So I
Mhm.
have a little more time. I don't want to raise my children to be latchkey kids. And
Mhm.
so we're sitting with ourselves and we're saying, hey, what needs to happen? And so we're beginning to understand that there is trauma that we need to deal with. And so, but we're no longer in survival mode, we're now in thriving mode, or we're trying to get there. And so that allows us the space to begin to say, hey, professional therapy, I think I need to tap into that. But when you're just in survival mode, when you don't know where you're gonna lay your head at, when you don't know what you're gonna eat, when you don't know if your children are safe, the
Mhm.
idea of therapy, that you could care less about that.
It's a luxury.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm. It's a luxury when really it's a necessity.
Exactly.
Hmm. So, hold on. Janae said, interesting. You're right. Didn't consider that. Thanks for the insight.
You're
So, as
welcome.
it relates to pros, you talked about knowing yourself, getting to know yourself better, um,
Mm-hmm.
and also considering who you can become through
Mm-hmm.
working through past traumas, past hurts, past adverse experiences, and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you Are there some things or some tips or techniques that you can provide for folks that want to try to tackle that themselves without the use
Mm-hmm.
of a therapist?
Yes. So I think the first thing that we can all do, you know, we aren't there. We aren't ready for therapy. But the first thing we all can do is stop. And I'm gonna give a story about what made me stop. I was cooking one day, and the twins might have been about 6, and I was cutting the onion, and I cut my finger,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was bleeding, and one of the twins was like, "Oh, mommy, I didn't know you bled. I thought you were like Superman."
Mm.
So, um, and I realized like my children, they don't see me cry, they don't see me
Mm.
nervous, they don't see me scared, they probably don't see me overwhelmed because we are strong.
Right.
And so it was in that moment that I said I had to be more human,
Mm.
because especially for my boys,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't, and my girls, but this idea that we have to be so tough, I don't want to be Superman. I want to be human. So when you cry, I had to begin to like model that it's okay to cry. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to feel. And so I think that's the beginning place, acknowledging where we are in our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Acknowledging that, hey, I might be sad. I might not be this happy. I
Mm-hmm.
might be stressed. I might be frustrated or overwhelmed or lonely or not happy, or embarrassed or shame. So it begins with acknowledgement. So, sitting with yourself hurt,
Mm-hmm.
or I never got over what this experience. I never got over this fear, or I walk with this fear because.
Mm-hmm.
And so beginning to acknowledge where you are, and you might not be there all the time, but paying attention. So acknowledging where you are and noticing where
Mm-hmm.
you are when you are there. So
Yeah.
you might be at work and be fine. You might be at home within your comfort and not have a care in the world. And so, but it might be at nighttime when you're on your way home. So paying attention to where you are when you may be triggered or what's going on around you. And so, pausing and taking time to breathe, like
Mm.
literally
Yeah.
taking time to breathe. And so, um, we don't realize how either we usually are so busy working or moving that we don't even breathe properly. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we pause and allow ourselves to breathe, then we allow ourselves to physically feel, because we have a biological response to breathing properly.
Okay.
Um, so along with that, taking breaks
Mm-hmm.
from whatever it is that yes, being present, very good. That's it, mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
But taking breaks from whatever it is that might be triggering for you, that might cause you anxiety, that might cause you depression,
Mm-hmm.
that might cause you to be in that place that you don't like to be in, and making time to sleep and exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep, exercise, and again, breathe.
Yes.
So, and staying connected, reaching out and staying connected.
Mm.
So, with your family, with your friends, with somebody that you trust, a sister circle, a healing circle, a support group, something with somebody else, so that you aren't in this space because you feel like you're carrying this burden on your own.
Mm-hmm. So you don't
If
feel all alone. You don't have to be isolated.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
somebody there that can listen to you, relate to you, that can encourage you or help you see things through.
Right.
Mm.
Or even, call you out like, no, I need you to change that thought process.
Right, right,
So,
right.
mhm.
Definitely need those people in our lives.
Mhm. Definitely. And if you are in an unsafe environment, making sure that you remove yourself from there. Um, Setting healthy boundaries is extreme. Setting boundaries, period, is extremely important. And so when we begin to set boundaries, when we begin to uh, show self-interest, some people will call it selfishness, but it's showing self-interest. When we begin to show self-interest, we begin to feel a lot better.
You acting funny, girl.
That's all right. If I gotta act funny to feel better,
Mm,
it has to happen. And
mhm.
so and even with that being said, we gotta let go of people who hurt us. We gotta stop trying to hide our strengths. We have to stop overextending ourselves. Um, it's some stuff we just, gotta let go. We gotta stop forcing things that need time. We have to let go of unrealistic expectations. We got to get rid of these blurry boundaries. If it ain't no straight line, just throw the whole line away. And
Mm,
so
mm.
we got to stop comparing ourselves to others, and even especially with social media, we'll be looking at somebody's spotlight, comparing it to our behind the scenes. And
Yes.
so and most importantly, we have to stop second guessing our intuition.
Yeah. So everybody is co-signing on all of the things that you're saying. Javon mentioned, she said she set boundaries and watched people disappear out of her life. Their leave was her peace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You'd be amazed. And it's okay. And then if you want new people, they will arrive,
Yeah.
but they'll arrive with the expectation that I will respect you, I will honor you, I will support you.
Mm,
And any relationship we are engaged in, it should be a reciprocal relationship. It
mm,
should be some give and it should be some take. All of these relationships, where it's just give, 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 they need to go. And I'm even giving an example. If you take a newborn and you have a relationship with the newborn, you
mhm,
have a baby. In my mind, you should really be giving to the newborn. That should be a give, give, give relationship. But the reality of it is, it's not. Newborns offer something. They offer love. They offer smiles. They offer giggles in their sleep. If
mm,
a newborn is able to offer me something at that phase, then everybody that I engage in a relationship should bring something to the table.
mhm. So we
So
got,
we
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
I just don't think we have to be intentional with our relationships.
Absolutely. So we got John Curry on here. He said, as young black men console themselves, grieving to them is portraying weakness. Figureheads in their life must let them know it's okay to express those emotions. I've heard single mothers tell their sons, you're being weak. Stop crying.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that is a problem in our community. And
Mm,
so and that kind of goes back to that being emotionally unavailable. And so and so because some you got like you just said single mother. So when you're talking about a single mother, there isn't a man there. And so somewhere down the line, it he it may be perceived that um crying is weak for a man, but it's not. And that's why I say, we, even as women, we run the world, so we have to be okay with showing our emotions,
mm,
letting our boys know that it's okay to feel, it's okay to express those feelings, even our husbands and our significant others, because we women set the tone, and so we have to make sure we create a space for that. And so if you ever engage with men, if you ever see men amongst men, oh, they'll tell them, they're amongst themselves, they will acknowledge they hurt, they will acknowledge that pain. It's when they get around us that they want to be hard. So if we make space for them to understand that they could be vulnerable, they could be honest with their feelings and their emotions, we'll see it more. But men with men, oh yes,
Mm-hmm.
they about worse than us when
Yeah.
we together.
Yes, indeed. I have found that to be the case. Even on the Man Up Monday platform, that, if they feel comfortable enough to share, then they kind of open the floodgates on,
Hmm.
what's going on with them. So, yeah, I want him to be comfortable to do that, because he holding all this, hurt, pain, disappointment, anger. Anger is one of the emotions that men seem to have been socialized that it's okay to show that one, but
Hmm.
fear, vulnerability, mm-mm. You need to be able
But
to
you know what?
show. You need to show all of that. You need to be able to do.
Right. And what happens is that fear, that hurt, that it whatever shame, it shows its anger. When you start getting to the bottom of it, it's a different emotion. It's just presenting itself as anger
Mm,
in men. So we have to allow space for men to feel and be okay with it.
yes, 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 yes. So it is What Women Want Wednesday. And John, I appreciate you being on and asking for the men. But trust me, on Monday, we're going to be talking about boys and men of color healing from systemic and interpersonal trauma.
Mhm.
So we're going to dive all into that with my guests on Monday. So please tune in. All right, Janita said being vulnerable is a step to normalize therapy in our community.
Mhm.
Hmm. Okay, very good. So, any other thing that you want to say relative to the pros, or the
Um,
not the pros, relative to Black women and professional therapy?
I just no,
Okay,
not
that's fine.
no. I encourage, even if as a woman, if you feel like you need help, or and not even, and we get offensive by help, so I won't even say help. We don't even want help, but it's okay to want help. But
Okay.
if you find yourself overwhelmed or stressed and you can't manage, seek assistance, reach out. It is okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good. Very good. All right. Well, did you want to do the exercise that we talked about, or
Yes, I
okay?
do. And so and it's twofold. And so the first thing I want to do is we're gonna do a mental health assessment.
Okay.
And so ladies, are you listening? And John and whatever other guys that
Yes.
are on.
Yes.
But
John said, "Thanks for having me. I must be able to reach all genders. Knowledge is power." And absolutely. So you are
that
welcome
is
to
true.
take it on.
That is true.
Everybody is welcome. So appreciate it.
So one of the things that can be deceiving or scary when you're talking about um uh therapy is a mental health assessment. So what is a mental health assessment? And before I answer that question, I want to ask a couple of questions. And these are yes or no questions. And so the first one is, do you feel good today? And so if you yes or no, and it's for you.
Okay.
You don't have to share with us. And then the next one is, did you get adequate sleep last night? And so, are you doing the things that you love to do? And do you find yourself unable to focus? So, um, now, based on your answers, that is a mental health assessment. And so, when you hear mental health assessment, don't get crazy. It's an assessment that allows a trained professional to be able to basically take those simple yes and no questions and determine if we need to go further. So depending on if you answer what you answer yes and no to, then the next question might be, are you feeling overwhelmed? If so, how many days of the week are you feeling overwhelmed? If it's more than 4 days out of the week, that is a problem. Do you find yourself unable to complete your work task? Are
Mm-hmm.
you agitated at your supervisor or your children? So those are things that that's a mental health assessment that allows us to really explore what's going on. Do you feel like hurting yourself? And so has the thought crossed your mind? And so, do you have a plan for something that doesn't that you don't like? And so just that's a mental health assessment.
Okay.
And so in closing, we ready to close, Nicole? We got a few minutes.
We got a few minutes. I mean, we are, but we
Okay.
got a few minutes. Look, we got to get all this good that you got for us.
So that was a quick mental health assessment. And so this is something, and Nicole, you got your paper and your pen.
I do.
So
I keep my notepad, right? Yeah.
and this is something that I want all of us to do, and
Okay.
we could do this every day. And I'll make sure I post some other ones on my page tomorrow.
Okay.
But we gotta there's you got either or and both and.
Okay.
We have to get out of the idea that it has to be either or. I have to be either happy or sad. No, 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 no. I can be happy and sad. So you got either or and both and. So it's okay to experience both and. And so and I want y'all to on your notebook, you're gonna write a list of I can be on one side and on the other, and you're gonna draw a line down the middle and
Uh-huh.
still. And so I'm gonna give a few examples. I can be strong and still be soft.
Mm.
I can be independent and still need support.
Mm.
I can be grieving and still find joy. I can be direct and still be kind.
Mm.
I can be a leader and still need guidance.
Mm.
I can be understanding and still have boundaries. I can be creative and still need inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
I could be a listener and still have a voice.
Mm.
And so that's part of that both and. We need to embrace both and more often.
I really like that because I think we tend to, I think we do a couple of things. One, get so caught up in what we believe we are that we
Mm-hmm.
don't allow ourselves to be something else. Um, to say I can be direct and still be kind. Direct people oftentimes may be labeled as aggressive or
Mm-hmm.
rude or mean. But no, it's you getting to the point, but you still can be, friendly or generous or kind,
Mm-hmm.
pleasant or what have you. So I think that's powerful to me. The thought of you being, and I in my mind, I'm thinking multidimensional. Like you're not
Yes, that's
just,
exactly what it is.
yeah, you're not just this one thing or what people project you to be or who they
Mm-hmm.
say you are. Because a lot of times we try to live up to other people's expectations of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I really, really like that. So so Janita wants to know, can you post those affirmations?
Yes, I will.
Okay. John said I can be lazy, however productive.
Yes.
And Fran just co-signed and said both and.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really, really good. I like that a lot.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. So as we prepare to wrap things up, how can folks find you?
Okay. So you can find me on Facebook at what's my Blue Lotus Counseling and Holistic Wellness. You can also find I have a website www.bluelotuschw, which is counseling and holistic wellness .com, and I'm on Instagram Blue Lotus CHW. And I'm around Tallahassee, and so it's easy to find me. But before we leave, I do have something that I wanted to share. And it's no matter how overwhelmed, frustrated, or I'm sorry, hold on.
I know you're talking a lot.
I'm sorry,
I
but
you gotta have that.
no matter how overwhelmed, frustrated, or ineffective I may feel, we may feel, or have felt yesterday, remember tomorrow I will give myself grace, compassion, and permission to try again. So, when we feel like we have a bad day, the next day, allow yourself grace, allow yourself permission and compassion to try again. And that try again doesn't need to be a list of 50 things.
Yes, 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 yes. So Johnny, I see your question. I'm gonna ask. He wants to know, why did you choose this profession? So if you can just briefly tell the viewers why you chose the profession that you did, Lashaundra.
Okay. So, and I have a story, but long story short, my mom was a drug addict, and so we ended up being in the foster system with DCF. I ended up being physically abused, sexually abused. I remember not having anybody that I could confide in, no one to help me process. So I was a hurt little girl. And as I grew older, I wanted to, and found my healing, I wanted to be that person who others could confide in, others could process, others could, I could be that facilitator of healing for somebody else because I needed just that, a facilitator of healing.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm. Mhm.
All right, so folks are chiming in. Love it, awesome sauce. So I think they really benefited from your presentation. This has been a great dialogue. So I first have to thank you for being my guest, for actually leading the charge for this month of July, Minority Mental Wellness Month. So thank you for sharing what you do, and giving us some things that we could take away and definitely reflect on in the days and weeks to come. So
Right. And thank you for having me and actually creating a space
yeah, no,
for this dialogue.
my pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure. So before we go, I definitely have to invite folks to subscribe to the Conversations with Nicole YouTube channel. That is, how you can connect with the broadcast and what we have going on. This actual show will be posted on the YouTube channel in a few days, so be on the lookout for that, so you can share that with others. And then a couple of things that I have coming up. Next week, Monday, which I have already alluded to, I will actually have Dr. Dana Denard on here and Jay Inglis on Monday for Man Up Monday, talking about Black men and mental health. And then next Tuesday, I'm doing a virtual uh, meet and greet with Allison Tent, who's running for Florida House Seat 9. And on that same date, I'm doing a Black History trivia contest with Joseph Ward from On the Shoulders of Giants. And that will kind of kick off my birthday kind of celebration. My birthday is on the 20th, but I'm kicking it off with this Black history trivia contest that Joseph and I will be doing, and he started posting about it today, and I'll start posting about it tomorrow. But we have prizes from several Black businesses here in Tallahassee that we will be giving away to the winners of that trivia contest. So that'll be next Tuesday, the 14th at 8 p.m. on Facebook Live. So I invite you to check that out. And again, throughout the month of July, every Monday and Wednesday, I'll have clinicians of color talking about Black and brown folks and how to treat them, how to engage with them, and the like. So, I invite you right here, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Man Up Monday and What Women Want Wednesday. So, appreciate y'all being here. Appreciate the comments, the dialogue has been great. I'm getting, again, some really great comments from folks. Janita saying you're a healer. Thanks for the session tonight. She feels better. That's great. I love that.
Yes.
Yes. So Dana's on. He said very good commentary. Thank you so much, Doc. I appreciate you being on here. Fran said you are definitely a facilitator of healing, and you're amazing. Thank you, Fran. Appreciate it. All right. So we're gonna call it a night, and we will see y'all next time. And thanks you so much again, Lashaundra.
Thank you.
All right.
Y'all have a good one.
Yes.